Hello friends, a very warm welcome to Ansarkari. It is again a very critical and important concept in chapter. That is nationalism, or what you can say state building in Italy. You cannot understand the chronology and also ramifications and implications of all these developments without going through all the lectures which we have done previously. Each lecture is inherently connected with the next lecture. And on the top of it, if you have read and if you have interest in world history, then you will be finding how coherently and in a very simple but yet very objective manner we have tried to create a story in the minimum possible time without actually compromising on any kind of examination stuff. So be ready, take your pen and pencil in your hands and your notebook, note down the keywords, try to visualize, connect so that we can discuss in the background whenever we are having virtual sessions, or even if you are having a phone conference with me and even meeting, to how to take out the best in the given possible time. Always remember, examination is also like state building in Italy. We have to get success by the virtue of hard work, smart work, and also ability to have priorities, like the way Italy had. So, going on after industrialization is the concept of nationalism, state building in Italy. So the centralized system of Napoleon that we have discussed in context of French Revolution and later on, it was paving the way for diminishing mutual animosity among various states, leading to the concept of nation state, and along with that, the beginning of industrialization, two vehicles of modern development. So the Napoleonic conquests are paving the way for the flowering of a sense of national unity. That is why after 1815, when suddenly Napoleon is no more in the scene, reactionary policy is adopted in the Congress of Vienna under Metternich. And Austria, which was still very powerful, it will try to gain control. The Pope ruled in central Italy. Only Piedmont and Sardinia belong to nationalistic identity. I would again say open your atlases side by side, and even you can take a printout of a map of Italy of the previous time, and then you will see that what kind of locations and what kind of spaces we are talking about. The rest of the Italy was ruled by either Austria or small rulers under their influence and control. Always remember the central Italy was ruled by Pope, and only Piedmont and Sardinia were belonging to the nationalistic identity, or you can say dynasty. That's how a beginning is made. Beginning is made by Italy not to just fight against colonialism of a new sense, but also to fight against hegemony of outside powers. So that there is a time period actually of different development. So from 1815 to 1850, the same time period which India had also seen in the times of Raja Ram Mohan Roy till the revolt of 1857. You can say it was believed to be only a geographical expression and not a nation state. So when Napoleon raised to power, he went on to bring new ideas in Italian peninsula, and northern parts were annexed by the French Empire, whereas the Kingdom of Italy was ruled by Napoleon himself. So Lombardy, Venice, Reggio, Modena, Romagna, and Marches, they were under French domination. So French ideas of revolution based on liberty, equality, and fraternity, they traveled from French troops to Italians, and the French rule recognized the old established ruling orders, and the destruction of feudalism was taking place. So one can say, and even in the mains examination, if the question is coming up, you can always say Napoleon kindled the national sentiments of Italians. Yes, it is true. Though we can write a couple of more ideas when we finish this lecture. The defeat of Napoleonic France, Congress of Vienna, pre-Napoleonic governments were established in Italy, Metternich, an Italian influential diplomat, and that's how the world will be seeing Italy again at the back foot. That is why he believed that Italy is a geographic expression, that's all. How these different identities of no consequence and shallow mindset can be a one nation. So Austria is providing security to small Italian states against future French invasion. So political reorganization is taking place. Papal state restored to Pope. Bourbon rule restored in the kingdom of two Sicilies. Two most prosperous provinces, Lombardy and Venice, were given to Austria so that French is kept aside. Parma, Modena, and Tuscany were given to Austria Habsburg Royal House. Only the kingdom of Piedmont and Sardinia had an Italian ruler. As I just said, it was having a national identity. So when we speak about colonialism spreading to rest of the world by these European powers, first we have to see that they were even killing their own brothers and sisters also. And that is why every country in the world has the right to be enlightened, every country has the right to be ruling by their own people, and they must have their own will. So that is why Italy, when you see in 1815, as I can show you here, Turin, Piedmont, Lombardy, Venetia, Tuscany, and Rome, Kingdom of the Two, that is Naples, and finally Sicily is over here. So the anti-Austrian sentiments, you can say, they were growing first among Italian-speaking northeast parts of Italy. They were against Austrian influence directly because they were feeling it. So Lombardy, Venetia, and indirectly these influences were seen in Parma, Modena, and Tuscany also. That is why Europe in 1815, please do have a look. Stop your discussion for a moment and then you stop here and just try to see that there is a French Empire, there is a Spanish Empire, there is an Empire of Austria, there is Ottoman Empire over here which we have discussed in the previous lecture, and then you can see Prussia over here, Russia over here, and then Kingdom of Denmark, Sweden and Norway, and definitely this is what is the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And that is how you can say from till here it is about Italy. So, like every nation and every national movement, there are certain events which take place. So, Carbonary movement is very important to understand. Informal network of secret revolutionary societies. What is the goal? Patriotic, liberal, and republican character by favoring constitutional and representative government. They drew their supporters from workers and middle classes. Their objective was to organize armed uprisings to liberate Italy from Austrian control. So, inspired by revolution in Spain in 1820, Carbonari incited a revolt in Naples in 1820. Austria sent an army to put down the revolution. Similarly, they incited revolt in Piedmont and Lombardy in 1821. So the aim of Piedmont revolt was to remove Austrians and to unify Italy under the ruler of Kingdom of Sardinia. But it was defeated with the help of Austrian army. So you can say the work continues. That is why we can say that the goal of Italy to achieve unification and independence was a long drawn. Mazzini was an Italian nationalist who believed in the idea of united, free, and republican Italy. He joined Carbonari movement, imprisoned by the Piedmontese government because of his radical ideas in 1830, and he was exiled from Italy. That's how he realized there is necessity for political awakening of Italy on a mass scale, like the way Indian extremists are thinking about after the moderates. In 1831, he organized a new political movement called Young Italy. The motto was God and the people, and it sought to propagate republicanism and nationalist ideas. Apart from unification of Italy, the Society of Young Italy soon superseded Carbonari as nucleus of nationalist revolution. Please do keep on noting down the key words which I am talking and which I am also highlighting. So Mazzini is encouraging the younger generation to sacrifice their lives for the cause of motherland. Now you can see how in India a national movement will also be taking shape. Maybe it is happening here in 1830s, in India it is happening in 1920s. So the goal is to understand that what impact Italy unification is going to have on the world and why Italy unification is important to understand certain behavior, certain kind of developments in Europe and having implications on the world. So, what are the features of young Italy? Focus on the behavior change among the Italians, doctrine of nationalism through education and revolutionary methods, like the way Indian revolutionaries were talking about, extremists were talking about. Idea of humanity, three fundamental principles: nation, people, and humanity. Three goals: independence, unity, and liberty. Liberal principles. A free nation should help other free nations to get freedom. India was also speaking about it. Republicanism means common aspiration by the people for the people. Citizens speaking the same language have equal political rights and civil rights, and the common aim is the perfection. In Italy, it is correct, but in India, it is unity and diversity. Against authoritarianism, he was opposed to Marxism and communism as he preferred private land holding for economic industrialization. So Italy was very clear that they have to go for a capitalist model. They want to promote free enterprises. Eurocentrism is also reflected. Integrative ideology, that means the concept of threefold unity under common industrialization for all, of all, for prosperity of all. So ideas of liberty, equality of all, human peace, and collaboration of all nations. That means we are using word here Eurocentrism because everything is seen from the perspective of Austria, from France, Prussia, and also from the perspective of UK. So another gentleman apart from Mazzini, who is Giuseppe Garibaldi, very very great and important gentleman. He was a disciple of Mazzini, very able military leader, participating with Mazzini in an abortive republican uprising against the king of Sardinia in 1834. he was sentenced to death. But he escaped to South America. Garibaldi gained fame for military exploits in South America, took part in several wars, learned the art of guerrilla warfare, returned to Italy in 1848, and he fought against the Austrians and then against the French. And he put up a gallant but hopeless struggle to maintain the Roman Republic of 1849. So that is how the first war of Italian independence is bringing so many things to the fore. And it was because of the efforts made by these people in the beginning. That is how things are happening. Poor peasants, due to their very poor seasonal harvest in 1846 and 47, and poor Italian faced inflated food prices. This will be one of the reasons. And apart from that, reformative movements of the Pope Pius, he was considered a liberal who aroused the hopes of political liberals and the poor, both in papal states and throughout Italy. He began political and economic reforms like pardoning political prisoners, created a council of state in order to share his power with the middle class. That means he was bringing liberal ideas, he was bringing a governance system, he established a municipal council for the betterment of Roman citizens. That is why people start believing in his leadership. They started believing that we are moving towards independence. So one can see over here for your revision, and you can always write in the history optional paper, and also in general studies paper you can always draw a small map and you can show Piedmont, Sardinia, Venetia, Papal States, Naples, Sicily, and that is in the detail how Italian unification is taking place, major battles, and Piedmontese advances are also shown here. First War of Italian Independence, 1848, because there were a series of revolts, so revolt in Sicily and Naples, because the liberal events occurring in Rome, other people also started, thinking about starting aspirations, like the way we talk about Arab Spring. That is why in Sicily a full-fledged revolt erupted, and they were demanding provisional government. Ferdinand II was forced to constitute a provisional government because of the revolt. Similarly, revolt in Lombardy and Veneto, Austrian rule in Lombardy was, they tightened their grip, harsher taxes, censorship, crackdown on dissent, citizens choose civil disobedience, strike in Lombardy causing decrease in the tax revenue, like the way we speak about Gandhian movements in India, and revolt in Tuscany in 1848. They were non-violent in Tuscany after Republican provisional government was formed. So when these things you read, then you find that when the Indian revolutionaries they are coming over to UK or they are coming over even to Germany or even France, they or even Italy, they will be getting inspired. And why not? So reformative steps by the rulers in 1848, Pope Pius IX granted a constitution to the papal, and also Charles Albert of Piedmont had published a liberal constitution for Piedmont. Carlos Alberto of Kingdom of Sardinia and Piedmont, he declared war against Austria because he believed that this is the way forward. So movement was developing into a struggle for national independence. Cavour, Count Cavour, a very important gentleman whose name I have not taken till now, but we will be speaking about it. He appealed to Carlos Alberto to lead a war of independence against Austrians. Therefore, King of Piedmont and Sardinia, they will be declaring war on Australia in order to help Venetians and Milanese in 1848. That is what is called the First Italian War of Independence. So rulers of Tuscany is sending 8,000 people, Pope Pius is contributing 10,000, Ferdinand II of Sicily and Naples sending 16,000 people to support Carlos Alberto of Piedmont in the war against Austria. So will it be successful? No. Defeat of Carlo Alberto in 1848, and he will be abdicating throne to Victor Emmanuel II. There will be decisive defeat by the Austrian forces in the Battle of Custoza in July 1848. Austria will be regaining control of Lombardy and Venetia. Seeing this defeat, Pope Pius IX withdrew his troops. King Ferdinand of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies called his soldiers back. So that means back to square one. So Pope Pius IX had abandoned the war against the Austrians, and many of his people considered him as traitors now. Romans were rebelling against Pope Pius' government, and there will be assassinations taking place. People will be very much angry, and they will be forcing Pope Pius IX to flee to the fortress of Gaeta under the protection of King Ferdinand II of the Two Sicilies. In Piedmont, having lost the war, Charles Albert abdicated in the favor of his son Victor Emmanuel II. Peace treaty was signed in August 1849, and Piedmont and Sardinia was forced to pay an indemnity of 65 million francs to Austria. So it was not happening by the East India Company in India. This process was already known in Europe some time back, when East India Company was also forging its tentacles in India, that they are going to subjugate others, they are going to even pay, make sure that others are paying for their deeds. So that is why we are saying that the process of unification of Italy is not just about events. You have to correlate, you have to understand, you have to see the inspiration, you have to see what kind of implications are there. So Republican government in Rome, like when we speak about the Mazzini and Garibaldi, they had the upper hand, and they were trying to create a kind of a modern system. In 1849, elections were held for Constituent Assembly, which proclaimed a Roman Republic on 9 February. And in March 1849, Mazzini arrived in Rome and was appointed chief minister. So things were moving, but then not moving in the way they were desiring. And think about India as a great nation, as a big geographical entity of such an ancient civilization. How that's possible that we will be getting independence as soon as possible? British were actually exploiting us. That is why our movement is also a great movement. So saving the Republic succeeded in inspiring the people to build an independent Italian nation. And as in the constitution of Roman Republic, religious freedom was guaranteed, freedom of press, death penalty was abolished, free public education was provided, and economically we can say the large land holdings of the church were also taken away and they were distributed along with the poor and the middle class. So Giuseppe Garibaldi and Mazzini, they tried to build Rome of the people, but it fell because of high price inflation and because of the weak economic situation of Rome. How you will sustain? That is how French intervention will be there, and Pope Pius will be appealing to Napoleon III for help. French president will be seeing this an opportunity to gain public opinion and Catholic support. French army will be arriving by sea, and with the help of Austrians, defeated the Roman Republic. So you see things how things are changing. So in July 1849, Pope Pius IX was escorted back into the town and ruled under French protection until 1870. So that means everybody is trying to create a process, everybody is trying to create a system. But then who is thinking about people's aspirations and also their long term uh, belief and long term their ideals? That will be the true point. So 1848 revolution was a failure. Why? Because confusion in the aims of leaders like division over republic or federation of states. What we should be having actually, how we should be creating one Italy, how and what kind of model we should be taking up. So that was actually undergoing a siege of churning. Lack of organizational support made it easy for leaders like King Ferdinand to suppress uprising in the Naples and Sicily, as we have discussed. No real leadership to lead, like the way we will see cover. So Pope Pius IX, Mazzini, and Charles Albert, they were not able to motivate the nationalists to rally behind them. That means things were actually taking shape, and there will be other things to come. So short-term aim was removing Austria. So removing Austria, is it equal to creating a unified Italy? There must be long-term aims. Uh, great power military intervention was a roadblock to their aspiration. In the Austrian battles with both Piedmont and Venetia in 1848, Austria crushed the revolutions using their strong military, where France used 20,000 troops to restore law and order in the Papal States. They did not have the support of the masses, and the revolution was organized by the social elites or radicals, like the way Mazzini we say. So the majority of peasants and workers did not get involved as they were content with the social reforms initiated by the Pope, as we said. And the weaknesses shown by the Pope against the papal officials who did not support the nationalist demand for unification of Italy was another reason. So everybody is actually happy in their own cocoon. So it became clear that Pediment King seemed to be only possible leader under which unification is possible. That's what people will be discussing while eating pasta and also pizzas. So the Republican ideas of Mazzini, they were too radical to attract the masses. Pope's action for French intervention in Rome made him anti-national in the eyes of people. So only solution left was the erection of a constitutional kingdom under the kingdom of Sardinia and Piedmont, as we started at the beginning of the lecture. And that is how things will be moving farther, smarter, and also consistently. So Italian Risorgimento, if I say Italian Risorgimento under Count Cavour, and who was a great gentleman, 1810 to 1861 is the time period. So unification of Italy, which is also known as Risorgimento, or however you pronounce it, was a 19th century political and social movement that in 1861 ended in the annexation of various states of Italian peninsula, its outlying isles to the Kingdom of Sardinia, resulting in the creation of the Kingdom of Italy. Inspired by the rebellions in 1820s and 1830s against the outcome of Congress of Vienna, the unification process was precipitated by the revolutions of 1848 and it was reaching completion in 1871 after the capture of Rome and its designation as the capital of Kingdom of Italy. So you can now see how Rome will be becoming the capital of modern Italy. Kingdom of Piedmont was the center. Why? Because uh, only Piedmont of other kingdoms had fought wholeheartedly against the Austrians in 1848-49. Other kingdoms had Austrian blood, but not the Piedmont ones. Piedmont rulers were influenced by liberal views regarding monarchy. Both King Albert and Victor Emmanuel II, they were also of this favor. The Prime Minister Count Cavour's policy towards economic progress paved the way for political stability. His policy is called Decade of Preparation from 1849 to 59. Under his governance, he achieved high standards of modernization of Piedmont. He modernized and standardized the credit and banking system, encouraged foreign investment, developed modern communications such as railways, and on the other hand, he maintained doctrine of separation of power and the principles of secularism by weakening the influence of the Austrian Italian Church in his government. That is why Count Cavour, about whom we are talking, he was a political journalist with the newspaper Risorgimento in Turin, gave a speech in front of many people for constitution for Piedmont, and he never really favored establishment of united Italy in the beginning, favored an expanded Piedmont rather than a unified Italy. He wanted, that means, Piedmont to spread all over, that idea to spread all over. Like most Italians, he resented the control that Australia had over his country. When an uprising in Milan against the Austrians occurred in 1849, Cavour was one of the many who advocated that the war that followed as a chance to expel the Austrians once for all. He was unsuccessful in that is in the beginning, but then he was brought to the Chamber of Deputies, and he was actually in the beginning favoring conservative ideas. Cavour lost an election, but was then brought back into Parliament, and he started to dominate the cabinet, became Prime Minister in 1842. His diplomacy, when we are speaking about defeat of Sardinia in 1848, it went on to convince him that you need certain aid of a foreign power to expel Austria. He decided to support France and Britain in the Crimean War. He wanted to get their help in return. By sending an army to Crimea, Cavour established a claim to equality with the other warring nations. So what is wrong with India asking the British that if you want our support, give us freedom? Sardinia also won admittance to the Congress of Paris. This settled many treaty matters after the war. Rest you can read over here. That is why Cavour's ideology, policy and program, liberal outlook, against republicanism, unifying Italy under monarchy. He was an enemy of republicans and revolutionaries. He was not too radical. He did not want it to upset social order. He believed in modernization, encouraged agriculture and industries through policy of free trade. He stressed on railroad construction using foreign direct investment in the building of many roads and canals. That's why he was getting money from outside. Italy was ready to get and also encouraging that support. Reorganization, army structure, because freedom and unity of Italy could only be achieved by the war, and for this purpose, he believed in the military strength against Austria. So he is upholding the doctrine of separation of powers because Piedmont and Sardinia had abolished religious courts and it introduced civil marriage. Now he also ordered close of half of monastic houses and he was reducing privileges of church. So that means he is moving towards rule of law, he is moving towards secularism, he is moving towards modernity. Internationalization of Italian problem is believed to be one of the reasons because he knew that Austria was the greatest opponent of the liberty and unity of Italy. That is why he wanted international forces to support Italy to drive Austria out of it. And he was having a different view than Mazzini because Mazzini believed that only Italians could complete that work of unification. Italia farsa das, Italia will defend for herself was the motto of 1848 war. But in reality, Austria uh, the war was disaster for Piedmont. Kevin knew Italian unity cannot be accomplished without the support from outside powers like Britain, France, Russia, and so on. That is why he showed realpolitik during the Crimean War of 1855, using the doctrine of realpolitik, supporting Crimean War. Russia lost an alliance of France, and you can say the United Kingdom, the Ottoman Empire, and Sardinia. They were participating into it. He sees the opportunity to join England and France against Russia for alliance with great powers. So in return, both of them would be helping Italy whenever it was required. So he took Piedmont state into the war in 1855 when it was more obvious that the Allies would win. So that means he was acting very smartly. Treaty of Paris was signed in 1856 as peace negotiations. Prime Minister of Sardinia, as Prime Minister of Sardinia, I should say, Cavour used the peace conference to give international publicity to the cause of Italian unification, and he denounced Austrian rule. He had no interest in the Crimean War or the Eastern question. It was just a medium. And he was able to win over French King Napoleon III, and a secret pact was signed because both British and the French they were sympathetic to the Piedmont demands, but they were against any action against Austria. They were also believing in the fact that there will be, it will be upsetting the cult of balance of power. But Cavour will be creating situations. So he used one of the situations of assassination attempt on the Napoleon III by an Italian named Orsini. And Orsini in 1858 wrote a letter to the emperor while in jail awaiting trial. Orsini said that as long as Italy is not independent, the peace of Europe and your majesty is but an empty dream. So set my country free, and the blessings of 25 million people will follow you everywhere and forever. That is how Cavour was determined to help Piedmont against Austria in order to diffuse wider revolutionary activities against his government in France. Therefore, after a covert meeting between the Napoleon III and Cavour at Plomburies in 1858, a secret treaty of alliance against Austria was signed, named Compact of Flanders, in which France would help Sardinia, Piedmont to fight against Austria if attacked. And Austria would be driven out of Lombardy and Venetia, and these two provinces were be added to Piedmont. And rest of the Italy was to be made into separate kingdom. In return, both the countries would tackle revolutions in their country. Napoleon was to receive the seat of Piedmontese royal family. So again, the process is going on, and it is a smart diplomatic work. That is why it has taken decades and decades. And you can see here that how Kingdom of Sardinia in 1859, how Northern Italian Kingdom 1859, it was incorporated in 1860, transferred to Kingdom of Italy in 1868, and the certain territories were acquired by Kingdom of Italy in 1870. So the process is going on. That's what we need to know. So Second Italian War of Independence, when we are speaking about, it is also called Sardinian War, the Austro-Sardinian War, or the you can say Franco-Austrian War, or the Italian War of 1859, was fought by the Second French Empire and the Kingdom of Sardinia against the Austrian Empire in 1859, which played a crucial role in Italian unification. And again, I am stressing upon the fact because unification of Italy was important because it is going to create a large European power, fifth most prosperous country in Europe after Russia, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and France. And creation of Italy as a great power is going to weaken Austria, and it is going to temporarily help France to boost its position. That is why France is ready to help, as we have seen. But in these situations, Austrian, they will be sending an ultimatum to Cavour demanding that Piedmont disarm instantly or face war, and that is why acting as an aggressor when it was rejected by Cavour. And now Napoleon III was greatly satisfied that now it is time to help Italy. That is why a war will be breaking out in 1859. Australia thought of swift victory, but then they went on to face defeat at the hands of Franco-Piedmontese forces in Lombardy at the Battle of Magenta and Solferino. At the same time, the northern part of Lombardy, Italian volunteers of Giuseppe Garibaldi's Hunter of the Alps, they defeated Austrians, and Lombardy was clear of the Austrians. So that means you can say from uh, different points there is a pressure, and that's how situation is working. On the other side, there was a Prussian threat of support to Italians against Austrians. So after the Austrian defeat at the battles of Magenta and Solferino, Austria was now fearing that if Persian is also going to enter into a war with the French, then it will be disaster. That is why Austrians are going to sign Treaty of Villafranca with France on July 11, 1859, in which Austria will give Lombardy to Sardinia. It will be but retaining Venetia, and the rulers of central Italy, that is Tuscany, Parma, and Modena, were to be restored to the Italian Federation led by Pope. So situation is changing, but again step by step. So the idea that Britain wanted united Italy, no. France wanted a united Italy, no. But they were looking for their own benefits. That is why whenever time and opportunity uh, arose, they went on to support. Even French was fearful of united Italy. They wanted a stable pope ruling Italy to appease Catholic party in France. French were fearful that a united Italy would have been dangerous for France. So after defeating Austria, they, because if Austria is defeated and later on if Austria and Prussia are coming together, then it is going to destabilize the balance of power. Therefore, French king wanted a divided Italy under French hegemony. King Emmanuel of Piedmont accepted the Treaty of 1859, but by Sardinia and Piedmont, they protested against the Treaty of Villafranca as the central Italian states were occupied by Piedmontese. They were not willing to show any kind of, going back to the subordination or subjugation. So the French showed no willingness to force them to abide by the terms of the treaty. So here, King Victor Emmanuel accepted the treaty against Cavour's advice. Cavour was saying no need to accept it, but still it was accepted. So the Lombardy was integrated into Piedmont, but unification was lost cause as of now. Because as I am saying, it was wiser to take one step, but then not, it was useful at that moment, that whole process would have been destabilized. So like with the French, like the role of the Persian, similarly with the English. Led by liberal ministers like Palmerston and Russell, they were openly sympathetic to the Austrian, I should say Italian aspirations. They declared that the Italian people should be allowed to settle their own affairs. So that's why they are also supporting it. So Parma, Modena and Tuscany, they are going to merge with the Kingdom of Sardinia. because once the news of evacuation of Lombardy by Austrians, it was causing a popular revolt in the central duchies of Parma, Modena, and Tuscany. All these are going to set up their own provisional governments. Unanimously voted for the fusion with Piedmont. In 1860, the central Italian states like Parma, Modena, Tuscany, and the Papal States, they were annexed by the Kingdom of Sardinia. So you can see consolidation is going on. They unanimously voted for fusion with Parliament in a plebiscite. The French and British approved the annexation due to public pressure in Italy. So you see how things are changing. Place is same, circumstances are changing, but then it is being done in a very, very strategic manner. Italian unification in the south when we are speaking about, because as we are seeing north, central, and south. So annexation of Tuscany, Modena, and Parma to Piedmont by 1860, Italian nationalists now set to integrate the kingdom of two Sicilies, Naples and Sicily, in the whole process. It was under the rule of Bourbon monarchs. So Garibaldi collected his famous 1,000 red shirts volunteers army in operation to support rebellions against Bourbon Kingdom of Sicily and Naples in 1860. Garibaldi, though sympathetic to democratic ideas, worked for Emmanuel II, the king of Piedmont Sardinia, as we already said, to achieve Italian unification. He was growing impatient with Cavour because Cavour was very strategic. Cavour was a smart guy. He never wanted to get things too dangerous and too violent, so that whole cause is lost. But Garibaldi was not ready, so that is why he was ready to launch his own initiative to help Italy unite. British will also be entering into the war because the revolt in Italy in 1860 made Garibaldi attack Bourbon Kingdom in the south with the covert support of UK, because Britain was worried about the Naples rulers' close naval ties with the Russian Empire in the Mediterranean Sea. They believed if the Naples rulers are going to act with the Russians, then we are loser. Therefore, British supported Garibaldi's expedition to secure Sicilian ports, a strategic location on the way to the newly opened Suez Canal. Further, they wanted Sicilian surfer for the new steamers. So every country was acting in their own selfish manner. Thus, by 1860, Garibaldi collected more than 1,000 volunteers in red shirt, landed at Western Sicilian port with the help of British ships present in the harbour to deter the Bourbon ships. So Italian unification was complete except the papal part. By 1861, Parliament proclaimed Victor Emmanuel King of Italy, and Rome was declared capital of Italy. Italy had a liberal constitution, and Cavour purportedly said on his deathbed, "Italy is made, all is safe." But Mazzini was continuing to agitate people for a republic with his motto, "Free from Alps to the Adriatic." So there were obstacles like French troops stationed in Rome. Catholics were very, very angry with that, and Catholics around the world were angry for taking action against the Pope. On the other hand, March of Garibaldi in 1862 for Rome with the slogan Roma o morte, Rome or death. Fearing diplomatic crisis, Italian government sent a regular army to subdue the red shirts, but Garibaldi forbade his men to return fire on fellow subjects, that mean Italians, of the Kingdom of Italy. He was imprisoned, but he was released. So the peaceful alternative solution to integrate Papal into Italy was thought about. Victor Emmanuel sought an alternative solution, and he negotiated with the Emperor Napoleon for the removal of French troops from the Rome, to which French Emperor agreed on the condition in September Convention 1864, and condition was that France would withdraw all their troops from Rome within 2 years, and the King Victor Emmanuel II of Italy would guarantee that the frontiers of the Papal States would remain so. However, the treaty was opposed by Pope, French Catholics, and the Italian patriots. Further, Italian patriots under Garibaldi organized an invasion of Rome in 1867, but they were defeated by 2,000 French troops stationed at Rome in the support of Pius IX. So the things are going on. And the third stage of Italy unification, as we are saying, because of the Papal States, by 1870, Franco-Prussian War was starting. Napoleon III was recalling his garrison from Rome to defend their homeland. Italy remained neutral in Franco-Prussian War. Widespread public demonstration will be taking place. Italian government will be taking the Rome, but Rome remained under French protection, therefore would be regarded as an act of war against the France. But after the surrender of Napoleon and his army at the Battle of Sedan in 1870 in the Franco-Prussian War, Napoleon III was deposed, and now the French were in no position to take action against Italy. So you see how it is happening, but with a reason. So King Victor Emmanuel II sent to Pius IX a letter with 10 articles for peaceful integration into Italy. They were Italian state would guarantee the Pope's freedom to communicate with the Catholic world as well as diplomatic immunity. You can see today also. The Pope rejected the offer. Thus, Italian army crossed the Papal and Rome, and Latium was annexed to the Kingdom of Italy. The capture of Rome was the final event in the long process of Italian unification known as Risorgimento, marking both the final defeat of the Papal States under Pope Pius IX, and the unification of Italy and Peninsula under King Emmanuel II of the House of Savoy, as we have started in the beginning. So unification was complete. Destruction of the European order of Austria was also complete. French, who were weakened by Persian War of 1870, they were also there, and Italy was going to emerge as a great power in Europe, and that is how by the First World War it will be very, very powerful and a dangerous power. When we speak about the ethical attributes of the leaders, Mazzini, the heart and soul of Italy unification, believed in the change of heart, image of republican, democracy, liberty, people, and separation of powers. Garibaldi, he is known sword of Italy unification, anti-Catholic, believed in direct action, democrat, republican, warrior, people's leader. You can write these terms in your answers. Camillo Cava, mind of Italy unification, real politic, realist, skillful and observant, politician, skillful diplomat, monarchist, traditional outlook, old order, believe in diplomacy, stood against republicanism, against Mazzini's ideas of liberty and democracy. Victor Emmanuel too, sense of practicality, maturity, straightforwardness, leadership, and he was having quality in supporting his ministers. Mazzini's ideology, Garibaldi's militarily, Cavour politically and diplomatically paved the way for Italy unification. That is what we have just arrived to understand. David Thompson has remarked, Cavour was the real brain behind the Italian unification, while Mazzini was the heart and Garibaldi was the sword of Italian unification. So unification was complete as we have already discussed, and you can check out different maps. You can take printout also so that you can just revise and you can have quickly the dates and also the names. That's all you have to see. Rest analytical understanding is already there. So the various stages one can trace: course of movement for Italian unification with special reference to Mazzini, transform from geographical expression to nation state. Then also you have to summarize different stages of unification, including the occupation of Rome and Mazzini's conception of Italian nationality. And his dominant ideal was the recreation of moral unity of mankind. That is what we have been also talking about. He was thinking in a much bigger way. Role of Count Cavour: he was smart, strategic, and diplomat person. So he was going to, they have stopped me from making Italy by diplomacy from the north. I will make it by revolution from the south. That is what he's saying. And obstacles we have to discuss. And again, same question was asked in 2005. The unification of Italy was complete and the destruction of European order also started. That is also what we can write about. So please continue making yourself eligible and also successful in the examination by right approach and right action, like these three gentlemen, Count Cavour, Garibaldi, and Mazzini. Thank you very much for this lecture, and we will be getting back for the next one, and we will be discussing all the developments, answer writing, and other kind of issues in different type of interactions as we are taking place through different programs. Thank you very much. Do join, work, and get success with Ansarkari.